All right, guys, we are back. We're talking about money, money, money. The best thing to talk about as a small business owner. And we've got Richard Kerr and Nate Richardson from The Points Guy. And these are both people who I've been working with, who become friends of mine, who I love and appreciate. And the topic today is kind of a fun one, which is credit cards and points and maximizing points. Richard obviously has an airplane behind him, something that not many of us have been on recently, but hopefully again soon we will. But can you guys maybe just start by telling us, maybe Nate, tell us a bit about The Points Guy. What's the business? What do you guys do? How is it relevant to small business?
So The Points Guy started out about 10 years ago this month with a guy named
Congratulations.
Brian. And Brian was getting hit up by all of his colleagues when he was working at a major investment bank because they knew that he could help them take all their credit card points and their award points and maximize them so that they weren't using them foolishly, and they were figuring out how to take their families on great trips. And Brian's backstory is that he had done that for his family. As it evolved, what happened is that the Points Guy has become the lifeblood for the credit card industry when they introduce new travel cards. And part of that has been that there are a lot of credit card companies out there that have really amazing small business cards that have benefits that go and extend into allowing you to manage your employees' rewards and helping you to use those rewards for your business and your personal travel. So the business has evolved dramatically and become a juggernaut in the space, where what we are able to do is to help both individuals and small business owners choose the right credit card, help them to make that decision in the right way, and to take the points and miles that they're earning and maximize them. So where do you best spend those? And if you're a hoarder of those points, when's the right time to pull the trigger and say, I'm going to use these for X, Y, or Z on my business. And, we have seen a total evolution and growth in this business where so many people want to get the right card at the right time, figure out how to leverage it and spend those points and miles. So we're at the center of the whole points and miles universe and figuring out how to maximize your rewards for small businesses. And Richard, who we'll hear from, is probably one of the leading experts for this space and has been doing it for probably as long as Brian.
Awesome. Well, it's funny. I remember I met Brian the first time because I literally started talking about how terrible I was at maximizing my points. And he's like, let me help you. And then I met Richard years later and I was like, Richard, I'm still terrible at maximizing my points. And Richard's like, Krista, let me help you. So I am someone who needs you guys. I am in that category.
Never take your credit card out when you're with Brian or Richard, because inevitably they're going to be like, why are you using that card right now? And Brian, I've known Brian for 9 years, and he literally shames me every time I think I've got it. And he's like, not that one, right? You get 4x points with that other card. I'm like, oh.
So this is actually a good question. Richard, this is my first question for you. So I feel like what you're describing, so I get excited at the thought, like, oh my gosh, I could earn all these points. Like, how exciting is that? And then I get overwhelmed at the, it seems so complicated. Like, how am I going to remember to pull this card out at this thing and this card at this one? And do I even have the right card? And then I just don't do it. So I'm missing out, I'm sure, on tens of thousands of dollars of travel and point easy a year. How he'd simplify it. Richard, teach us. How do you do this in a way that just doesn't feel like who has time to figure this out?
Yeah, that's the entire reason the Points Guy exists, because it is complicated, and small business owners and then people looking for personal credit cards have a plethora of options. So here is how I break it down if you are a newbie in points and miles. It is all about being goal focused. If you want to travel, where do you want to go? How long do you want to go? What level of luxury do you want to travel in? And if you don't want to travel, you want to maximize cash. You want to maximize the cash back. So first, set your goal. Do I want cash or do I want amazing travel? After you do that, then you can pick, hey, which airline will get me to where I want to go? Krista, you like to go to Australia. So maybe you want to use points and miles there. What airline do I want to fly? And then once you figure out that loyalty program, you figure out the best credit card that matches your goal. And once you stay goal focused like that, becomes a whole lot easier, because you say, hey, I only want to fly Qantas. How do I get Qantas points? What credit card can do that? Or if you say, hey, I want to maximize cash back, And most of my spend is in category X. There are great decision tools out there and references on the points guide that will help you maximize cash back. So stay goal focused. Don't try and take it all in at once. Sign up for the Points Guy newsletter, and it will learn you on a daily or weekly basis. But being goal focused is the only way to start eating that elephant.
That is actually really helpful. That's like, duh, I should have talked to you about this a while ago, Richard. That is helpful.
Lots of practice.
It is interesting because I'm very goal focused, but I definitely am in that category of, oh, well, I've got this card that gives me cash and this card that gives me points and this card, and then none of them really get me anywhere because it just doesn't make any sense when I put it all together. So you've just cracked the code in a very helpful way, actually. Okay, I like that.
You can do both, and you can be a crazy person like myself or Brian, where we have a lot of credit cards that do a lot of different things. But for the average consumer, I would say 1 or 2 credit cards is going to help you reach those goals. And it can be both cash and travel. So don't be hesitant to get more than one if you can do it responsibly.
How many credit cards do you have? Am I allowed to ask that question?
You're allowed to ask it. I will say greater than 30, believe it or not.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. My credit score is almost 800, and it always stays that way. A lot of myths out there about the business and personal credit reports. Bottom line is if you pay your bill on time and in full every single month and you keep organized, increasing your access to credit only increases your credit score. So, but again, I'm a crazy person. I use all these benefits and these points and miles. It takes a very special nerd to do that. So,
I think I want to be one of those nerds though. I'm actually getting I'm really getting excited. What about you, Nate? Do you working in this business, has it made you more focused on this? What's your goals?
So I actually I've received a few new cards since I've joined the Points Guy team. Brian 8 years ago nudged me into getting a Chase Sapphire Preferred card. So largely because of what you get on restaurants in New York City. And I also am about to say that I have been loyal to many airlines, but having joined the Points Guy, I'm really grooving to the Delta Reserve card and benefits, and I have more conversations around the joy I've gotten out of and the confidence I have in traveling with Delta. So it's this, my new goal is to get status on Delta. And so I've been using the card and trying to get to that, at least to the silver status. And I think I've met that.
Awesome.
That's a great case
oriented.
Delta Reserve card is a great case study for small business owners who travel. So there is a Delta Reserve for Business card from American Express. Helps you earn status if you put spend on it. Right now you get bonus points at restaurants. You can get into the Delta Sky Club with it. And you actually get bumped up a status category for upgrades. So if you and somebody else has the same status, but you have the reserve card, you get the upgrade and they don't. All things that make the business traveler's life easy just by holding this credit card on top of earning all the Sky Miles for free trips. So if that's something right there that you're looking for, it can really make the small business owner traveler's life a lot easier.
So every time I talk about something like this, I think to myself, this is such a no-brainer. This is obviously so obvious. Everyone should do it. What do you think prevents people from just sort of sitting down, getting the right credit card, and starting to get some of these goals figured out? What do you see as in the way? Because it always seems too good to be true whenever I talk to you guys. I'm like, oh yeah, I should just do that, and then I inevitably do not. So what do you guys see? What is in the way of people taking advantage of these things that are there?
I think number one is skepticism. Everybody thinks that there's something waiting to be a got you or anything like that. And growing up in the South, I'm a naturally skeptical person. And I thought the same thing before I got into this. It's too good to be true. And people honestly believe that, which is why a lot of the time credit card companies have great success making things as transparent and as simple as possible. The other thing is decision fatigue. Once you have all of these choices and you think, I don't want to do it, people just don't make the decision. So being skeptical and decision fatigue are the two things that I see hold up people from picking that right credit card.
Yeah, that's real. Nathan, you and I have had really good conversations about just the trials of being a business owner, right? It's hard to be an entrepreneur. You've got your own stories, I've got mine. So certainly it's true that a lot of small businesses, their credit gets dinged in their journey, right? It kind of, you have good years and bad years with your credit as you manage cash flow and you just manage the realities of being a small business. So is it true? I would imagine something that would stop a lot of businesses is thinking, oh, well, my credit's not great. I won't get the best cards. And so I won't even bother. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, maybe for fear of rejection. What advice do you have for someone who maybe, is not a delinquent, but just has the regular realities of sometimes not the perfect credit score? How do you How do you get started if that's the case?
You have nothing to lose by trying, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is like go apply and see what you can get, and start small with a small credit line and go from there. And there are cards for everyone at every spectrum of the small business range. And most banks want small businesses, and most credit card companies want small businesses because it's a great way for you to start with them. And as I've mentioned, I've had small businesses, tech companies that are startups, and there are times we used our credit card for various things, and it was extended pretty far along, and the bank worked with us, and the credit card company in their credit card attached to it worked with us. I have relatives who are small business owners who are wildly loyal to someone like Cap One, a cousin who's a small business owner, because they've seen her through so much.
Yeah.
And she sees the benefits, and it becomes this really important relationship. But in both cases, you start small and you grow the relationship, and generally you start to see the benefits, and they'll extend your line. But you have to start start small and see if you can apply to a bank or a credit card company that you feel comfortable with, and hopefully you get approved, and you move up the ladder from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. When I moved to the US, I had no credit because I'm Canadian. And I remember going through the process of looking at credit cards and thinking, oh, this is so embarrassing, actually. I don't have a credit score here. But you're right. That is what I did. I just took small lines. 2 of them I secured with cash, and then I paid them off for 4 or 5 months. And then, and it does actually build up. I was amazed how quickly I was able to build credit. It didn't take as long as I thought it would, actually.
The history of Capital One is that's how they started. They started, 25 years ago with people that didn't have great credit, and gave them $100, $300, $400 credit lines, and allowed them to do exactly what you just said, to build their credit score and build their credit profile. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for that. And there are other credit card companies now that are doing similar things for small businesses and for individuals who lack credit history. And I think it's really important that we encourage people to build a credit history, because for better or worse, our entire economy is based on, do you have a credit score?
Yeah.
And 50% of the population is unbanked, so they lack a credit score, which limits their ability to do so much more. Yeah, anything. So look for those starter products to build your credit score.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's funny. In another conversation we had talking about debt recently, there was really the same conversation, right? Like, you may not be able to get the perfect debt, or you may not get as much money as you want, but start somewhere and build, right? And I think that's, as entrepreneurs, we always want the best, or that we want it fast, right? But some of this stuff, it does just take time, right? You've got to build and build and build, and the reward will come eventually. So, Richard, I see you want to say something. Go.
Same goes if you've had some mistakes in the past, or if you've had things go south out of your control in the past. For a lot of people say, I had a business go under 7 years ago, so I just don't mess with it anymore. You can recover quickly as well by showing good behavior over the course of less than a year. So to all those people who say, I don't want to mess with this because of some rough luck in the past, don't worry about it. You can recover over time.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that, because I think, in almost every one of these money conversations we've had, I always say that one of the things that strikes me working with small businesses, especially about helping them hit their financial goals, is there's a lot of shame and emotion attached to money when you're an entrepreneur. And so I think a lot of the things that are just logical, we'll start with a smaller credit line, or, build up and then go from there. There's so much emotion attached to it. It's the emotion that stops us, not the actual practical idea that there is no solution. So, okay, let's go back to talking about some fun things. So, Richard, if you were thinking about your goals for points and you had to choose between travel and cash, is it truly just a personal decision, or are there any trends in which one you'll ultimately get more value for? Like, if I love travel, so that would be my gut, my instinct would be that. But how do you compare value? Can you?
Yeah, you can. And I'm going to get just a little bit nerdy on you for a second.
Okay, do it. I like it.
There are points that you can earn from banks that do not have a fixed value. Depending on how you redeem these points, you can get really outsized value, or you can get undervalue from them, which is why the points guy exists, so that we create educational material that allows you to get outsized value. That means your potential is always higher by earning points rather than straight cash back. You get a 2% cash back card, that's great, but no matter what you do, your value will never exceed a 2% rebate on what you spend on that card, versus earning some of these bank points like American Express points or Chase points or Capital One points that give you the potential for outsized value, like redeeming for a $10,000 business class flight. Doesn't matter what that flight costs, an airline program will always charge you the same amount of miles.
Right.
So I like going for the outsized value, and a lot of people do. Flying these jets behind me up front and the pointy end on something that I could never afford personally is really what got me into this. So if you want the cash, you can take it. And I'd never fault anybody for doing that, especially business owners. I get it. But if you're after that outsized value, that's where the points make it possible.
Interesting. Okay, that's actually very helpful. Because you're right. Because the cash seems alluring, right? Oh, well, there's $20 I got. But if you have the equivalent of a $2,000 flight that you could get, that's the way to go.
I think so. And it just really comes down to, you have to spend the time to educate yourself just a little bit. And you got to be willing, but that knowledge hurdle is often far too much for people to get over. But it's worth it in the end, I promise you.
Okay.
Do you ever get tempted with pay with points, Richard?
Say it again.
Do you ever get tempted with the pay with points option that you see on checkouts in different places?
It takes very unique circumstances, which we happen to be in right now, where some of the credit card companies have come out and said, with Chase, for example, you can redeem your points at greater than 1%, which is usually their value, towards groceries purchases. So, typically that's something I would never do, but now that I get 1.5% to cover all of my grocery bill, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old that eat really healthy, expensive food. So and they eat a lot of it, believe it or not. So, having the ability to make that free right now is very tempting. Traditionally, no. And one of the things that we see that just really hurts my feelings as a points and miles professional is when people use points for merchandise. They say, look at this blender or this bicycle I got with my points. You're just getting very subpar value by doing that, because the amount of points that they charge for a $300 bicycle could get you a $5,000 transatlantic flight, right? So these are the things you need to be aware of. So typically redeeming points for either cash or merchandise is not something I like to do. Right now, it happens to be attractive because of limited time promotions. But please don't redeem your points for blenders. Please don't do that.
That should just be the theme of it. This is the advice from the Points Guy to all small businesses. Do not redeem your points for blenders.
You see it all the time.
So is it true? Is it true that flights are generally the best value? Is that generally the best way to use points?
Flights are luxury hotels or hotels during peak dates.
Right.
I love redeeming points for hotels around college sporting events, professional sporting events, when they're going for $1,000 a night, but still very few points, or getting those flights, especially long haul flights. You can really just get tremendous value that equate to 10 to 15% rebates on the spend that you put on a credit card.
So if you're a small business owner, which every small business owner travels, they go to conferences, they travel for business development, they travel with their family. I mean, it'd be fun to do like a very clear goal, right? I am going to replace all my travel costs in my budget with points, and I'm going to, get the card and the spending right so that I can cover that. I mean, that's real value. I mean, that is, and we were talking before we started recording that when you're in the middle of a crisis, cash is king, right? And I remember one of my business advisors, this is not new news, but it costs, you have to make a lot of money to make $1 in your pocket. But you just have to not spend $1 in your pocket to have $1 in your pocket, right? It's essentially cutting expenses is a more efficient way to preserve cash than trying to just always generate new revenue. And so, I mean, if you think about the practical element of this, right? You essentially cut out your travel budget, or you dramatically decrease it if you use the points properly. That could make a big difference for an average small business.
We do that here at the Points Guy.
Yeah.
Right, Nate? I mean, we use the points that we earn as a company to pay for business travel,
right,
to keep our expenses down. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about small businesses that, they choose a brand, say IHG, which owns Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express. And for all their small business travel, they'll stay at the Holiday Inn brands. But their goal will be to stay at a personal vacation with their family at one of the Kimptons or one of the luxury properties in the IHG collection. And similarly, they'll do the same with Marriott or with they'll do it with Hilton, where they'll stay at like the business traveler economy brands in their portfolio. They'll accumulate the points and miles or the points with those hotels and use those to take their family on a big vacation. So we hear a lot of really interesting use cases by small businesses where they're able to really maximize, and to Richard's point, set a goal of, I want to go to the Maldives and use all these Holiday Inn points at the top end resort in the Maldives.
That's cool. It's actually, oh, go ahead, Richard.
There are loyalty programs just for small businesses.
Right.
They're actually subcategories of programs. So all of your employees can stay at the same hotel chain and your master account is credited. They get their individual points as well, but your master account also gets points, which become, I've seen dentists send their entire staff on Christmas vacations from the master account. I mean, just tremendous ways that small businesses can pool rewards that cost nothing, by the way. These are free. These are incentives to get
money you're spending anyway.
And pool it. So there's a sub level that these companies are continually struggling to get the message out that we have a small business loyalty program that is like a second layer of earning on this. So there's just a lot of opportunities out there for small business owners.
There is, I know and to your point, we started by saying this. So one of the last questions I'll ask is, at a really practical level, so, set the goal, right? So let's just say we all have the goal. We want to counteract our business travel and our family travel with points. Let's say that that's the goal. So then what do you do next? Do you start exploring credit cards? Is that sort of the next option to make sure you've got the right credit card? Is that step 2?
Yep. If you know that you have to send your entire staff to a conference in Florida every single year, I would look at, okay, what airline do I always fly? We always fly Southwest because it's affordable for my business. What credit card is going to get you Southwest points?
Right.
That's literally how it starts. Then you get that Southwest business credit card, which they have, gives you all kind of perks for flying Southwest, believe it or not. Put all of your company spend on that every month, get the sign-up bonus, and then the conference next year, especially with Southwest, you're gonna be able to send your entire staff with free plane flights. I mean, so that's literally the flow of how it works.
Amazing. Is there a way, so let's say I live in New York City, but I spend time in Australia. I do this, I do that. I tend to order in food once a week. Is there a way to figure out what card has the best point structure based on lifestyle? I don't know if I'm asking that properly. So maybe it's not about destination of travel, but I use my card in all these ways. Are there calculators? Like, is there anything like that? Maybe I'm asking you a leading question. Maybe you guys have that. I actually don't know. I am sure genuinely asking that question.
No, if you head to the old Google machine and pop in the points guide, best credit card for Amazon spenders, best credit card for Costco buyers, which tons of small businesses source supplies at Costco. Yeah. We have a guide there that will break it down. And these are not, this is our writers and our editors' expertise. This isn't somebody paid us to be on this list. I mean, it's literally what we think is best.
Genuinely the best.
Spend all of their money at Amazon. You make the list. And so we definitely have those guides that are out there.
Okay.
And to Richard's point, we not only we have the lists and the guides, but we are introducing an app in the next 3 months that will help you make that decision and manage your points and miles so that you're doing it. You're maximizing all of those points and miles, and the tools and the calculators will be there. So the engine will help you to make that decision.
That's awesome. That's great.
So watch the space.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of skepticism out there, but it is literally doing nothing more than maximize what you already do.
Yes.
A rebate in the form of points or cash back. And they're seen as rebates in the IRS's eyes, and they're not taxable. So that's always a key point as well. People ask that all the time. Do I have to pay taxes on my credit card rewards? No, you don't. They are rebates from using the card. Credit card rewards are not taxable. Bank account rewards are.
Right.
Caveat there. Credit card rewards are not taxable.
How fascinating. How fascinating. So literally, I mean, it's so interesting, right? I feel like I get educated every time I talk about these things. It is literally just about investing a little bit of time up front for this ripple effect that just goes on and on and on, right? Because I'm assuming the longer you use the card, the more points you get, the better, the more savvier you get. I'm sure just like any behavior, you get better at it as you go. So what's your best guess? Do you spend 5 hours to sort of get started and get it figured out? Do you spend 10 hours? Like if you had to put a time budget in place to do the research, set the goals, apply for the right credit card, organize, what's your best guess? How long does it take really?
Right now, I would say between 5 and 10 hours of reading and research. In a few weeks, with the course we're building, hopefully an hour and a half is what our goal is now, to give you the base knowledge to make it happen. But right now, Head of the Points Guy, 5 to 10 hours of research starts with our written beginner's guide, which will soon be an interactive course. But I'm telling you, this 5 or 10 hours, I know everybody's busy, especially as an entrepreneur, small business owner. It is well worth saving the cash down the line.
It is. No, it is. Listen, to invest 5 or 10 hours to offset your entire travel budget as an example of a goal, it is good. It is actually a good investment. There's no question about that. Okay, do either of you guys have final comments? Just, small businesses are going to be watching this. We're talking about money, which can be a complicated topic at the best of days. Extra complicated when the world feels like it's in crisis. Is there a book you've read or a resource that you go to or advice you've been given? Is there anything that you just have from sort of your personal experience, or maybe it's even resources that you've created for the Points Guy that you think is just particularly helpful for a small business to reference or read or view or think about?
I would start and say you're not alone, and there are a lot of people out there like you. And I would encourage you to join our Facebook small business group, because it's a very active group where people share their struggles, they share their goals, they share their tips and tricks. And you're not alone, and you should not be afraid to reach out on one of those groups and ask a question and ask for help, because as someone who's started several small businesses, one of the hardest parts is that it's a very lonely process, and there's a lot of shame, intimidation, and fear, but don't be. And these groups are meant to be a safe place where you can help to build and gain the strength and the courage and the confidence in what you're doing.
Awesome. Thanks. That's great.
Yes, would agree with that, where I spend a lot of my time in the small business Facebook group there. I just read a book called Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. It is less than an hour read. It is all about change and adapting. So please, Who Moved My Cheese is on Amazon bestseller. Please read that book, less than an hour. And then secondly, as far as credit cards go, these are instruments that, if used irresponsibly, can get you on the wrong side of things. So please do not undertake what we're talking about unless you know you can use it responsibly. And then absolutely, what Nathan said, community is one of the best resources that we can all use right now to stay in a positive place. So whether it's the Points Guy or not, please find a community of like-minded small business owners.
Awesome. Very good. I love that you had a little, your disclaimer in there as well. Very well done. Yeah. It is true. That is definitely a good point, right? Don't go spend tens of thousands of dollars on credit cards to get the points if you can't pay the credit card off at the end of the month. That is an important note to add to the conversation for sure.
Very much.
All right. Well, thank you guys. This is wonderful. You guys are doing really great things for small business. I'm appreciative of your time, and hopefully we're going to have a whole bunch of small businesses who are taking their families on vacations next year. Their travel budget is completely covered by points because they watch this.
I hope so.
Thanks, guys.